because these aren't actually TIE fighters, these are tie-in fighters, of course, created by Kuat Drive Yards. Now the, yes?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Filipino Freethinkers podcast that's also a video. My name is Red,
And I'm Kenneth.
and today we're going to talk about the Million People March that just happened a while ago. So, forgive us for if we're a bit slow on the uptake on this one because we're sleepy. I woke up at 3 a.m. What time did you wake up?
I didn't sleep because I had a show last night.
So there you go. Like, as did many people, I guess, because they all assumed that it would be very difficult to get there. Like, there was all this rerouting and all that. But
Yeah,
in
they
spite
closed
of
off
that,
quite a lot of that. Yeah,
yeah.
well, in spite of that, yes, it was very easy to get there as long as you left Makati at around 6 a.m. to arrive there before 7.
Yeah, but anyway, let's talk about the Million People March. Like,
Although current latest
Yeah.
estimates put it at between 80 to 100,000.
wow, 100,000, really?
Yes,
Yeah?
according to Ariel, whatever. According to Inquirer last I checked.
So we didn't get a million people, but it did feel like a million people when we were there. Like, didn't it? Like, at first, like, the field was so open. Like, all we could see was mud
yeah,
and
yeah.
grass.
When we got there, there was the only interesting thing happening was a bunch of people who created giant balloons on one corner.
Yeah.
Uh,
The
giant water balloon. No,
soap-
giant
soapy
soap bubbles.
balloon.
Soap bubbles, not balloons.
bubbles,
Sorry.
yeah. And someone
It's
was
been a long
flying a
day.
kite. And
Someone was flying a kite. Yes,
but
it was
as the day went on,
trying to navigate the mud.
Yeah.
As the day went on, the whole place filled up. Yeah. Although while most of the people there continually made fun of calling it a million people march when it would be impossible to get a million people.
yeah.
I personally feel it's a catchy enough name, and it seems to have trended worldwide on Twitter briefly, and definitely in the Philippines, number one.
Yeah, so it was a success by some measures.
If you measure it simply by attendance and by the people who went, and by the fact that nobody died, as
Mhm.
far as we know, yeah.
There were lots of police people, security people
Well,
there.
there were a number of meetings. The organizing committee that were not the organizers, because there seems to be an aversion to calling to referring to the event as organized. However, there was a body of people organized around the person who first called for it, Pichi Betania, and then we were privileged enough to have been invited, along with many other hardworking people who worked harder than us, frankly, individual citizens, but also people from a lot of organized groups, like so people from Bayan, Writers Philippines, etc., etc. And they all came together, and they made sure to do the series of meetings which were required to make sure that the space was secure. We met with the police, with the Manila Police. We went all the way to their Manila Police District headquarters, which was kind of strange. I mean, the architecture is kind of mixed. And then we had taxpayer-funded coffee and mamon from there, which was fine because we knew we were eating our taxes at once for merienda. And then, yeah, so the reason there were police there, the reason there were portalets there, the reason there were first aid stations there, was because of the hard work of the people who were sitting in and moving around that command tent, the volunteers of the Million People March.
So hats off to them. Hats off to all the people who organized this. Like, the
Yeah.
main goal of the people organizing this was to get everyone to attend this picnic or protest or march or demonstration or whatever.
Right. It's funny how in the preparations for it, you really did see the democratic process, and that there were a lot of people who were, frankly, arguing with each other, saying, "Okay, we can't do this, we can't have that." What we eventually settled on, at least most of the groups that had been working on it, was a gentleman's agreement that we would all share that space, and at least on the green area across the Quirino Grandstand, the Burnham Green area, at least there would be no loudspeakers, no large sound systems, and we would all try to do our own thing, as long as it wouldn't interfere too much with everybody else. So that even all of these other groups, whatever your interest might be, or if you have no groups, as long as you respect each other there. And for the most part, that was the case, with the exception of Radio Veritas.
Yeah.
They came in under the guise of media, saying that, okay, because we're media, they got in early, they had large tents, they made sure they get a central location, and then they set up a very large sound system. Now, which was fine if you're media, like, okay, although it was a bit big and they never bothered to talk to any of the people organizing it. Uh, once, once there, and then once we approached them, at first they were rather brash towards us. They said, "Oh, who are you? Like, why?" Because what they intended to do, they announced about 8 o'clock or so that they would be having a mass and a rosary, and that they would be broadcasting this over their sound system, so that the whole park would hear it. At that point, we went up to them and we said, "Okay, the agreement is you can use those very loud sound systems for housekeeping, maybe to make certain announcements. We cannot broadcast that mass." After which they said, "Why? Nobody told us that. We can do whatever we want." And the only time that they backed down was, thankfully, I had another free thinker with me, along with, we were up there with my volunteer badge, and then, but even then, they were like saying, "Oh, who are you? Like, we could do whatever we want. Like, we don't care." But then when I asked the free thinker with me to start filming, that's when they suddenly got quiet, and then they ended up not broadcasting the mass.
Okay, so much for some of the specifics. Like, let's just back up a bit for the people who are living under a rock, or have no access to the internet or to the mainstream media,
or
like,
don't care,
or who don't care. Like, this was, of course, about that whole pork barrel scam issue.
right?
It was discovered that
yeah.
that certain government individuals,
And
along with this
private
NGO owned by Janet Lim Napoles, who is being searched for right now, was
government
in,
individuals, um, NGOs organized only for taking in money by
So
Napoles.
ghost projects.
Also priests.
taxpayer money
Number
going
of
to
priests,
these ghost projects.
Yeah.
Most of which actually just go to the pockets of these politicians.
Right.
Allegedly, there's already a list, but of course we don't need to mention their names right now. There will be a proper investigation for all of it.
Most of the
And-
people on Team Buhay.
But people are sure enough that there is definitely some crime going on, and that got them riled up enough to organize something as big as this.
Yes. Yes.
So people are mad that their taxpayer money is going to not to the places that they should go to. And I mean, that's the kind of stories that we hear from the people who actually attended our thing. This event was cool because there wasn't a singular stage.
Yeah.
There were different organizations having their own thing, and
They made sure we had a video wall. The
Mhm.
main committee that was putting it together
Yeah.
had a video wall just to project images, and then they had a sound system, but only for housekeeping,
Yeah.
and then maybe for a basic call.
Yeah.
However, even then, they made sure that there would be no elevated stage,
Mm.
so that you couldn't see one person above everybody else.
So it was kind of like I was talking to Leloy earlier, and he said this was the closest to anarchy. Like, I wouldn't call it anarchy actually. It's kind of similar to what happened in the Occupy movement in the States.
Except
where,
more focused, therefore hopefully not as big a failure.
yeah. This was the call was definitely very focused, and there were two or three things that the people were
It's two
calling
things.
for.
It's
Yeah.
abolish pork and then prosecute those responsible.
Prosecute those responsible, and to keep the process as open to the public
Yeah.
as necessary. Of course, the FOI bill came up a number of times.
Right.
The importance of that.
In fact, there was some debate among the organizers to even put in the FOI bill
Yeah.
as one of the
Yeah.
things. However, it came out organically, even though we did not end up putting it on the main
calls, yeah.
on the main call. All of the people that we talked to, eventually they came back to the need for the FOI. At least the people there.
So we had a meetup, which is what we usually do every week, and we wanted to bring that to the public.
Right.
And a lot of people turned.
Yeah, no, it was
turned out.
remarkable. We
Yeah.
started with a small circle of people on our little trash bags.
Maybe
that
less
we-
than 20 at first.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and then we thought that we would just have a quiet meetup among
Yeah.
ourselves. But then suddenly, as we were discussing, this large crowd of people just started congregating around us.
Yeah.
To the point where it was like what, a couple of hundred or so. Like they informed us they could see it from command tent. So
Wow.
so yeah, then they just with Red moderating, and then everybody just wanted to say their piece.
Yeah.
There was, admittedly, because of the crowd there wasn't there wasn't a lot of nuanced argument,
Yeah.
and you didn't get the usual
Because
contrarian
what would
views
you
that
argue
get.
against? Like, what they were saying was a shared experience.
Right. It ended up being more of, I'm here. This is
Yeah.
what I'm here for. This is what I feel. And
Yeah.
most powerfully, these are the reasons that brought me here, and then that's when the personal stories came out.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when you started having people saying, "I'm a teacher," and then these are the things that happened to me. This is how the corruption has affected me. I am a former government employee. I am a current government employee
Yeah.
who gave up my private sector job just so that I could see if I could do something better for the country, and how frustrating that pork issue is.
And the diversity of the people who spoke up, like you get young people, students, you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
like seniors speaking up,
One
people
thing that
without
we-
jobs and with jobs.
Right, right. One thing that we appreciated, although it seemed like everybody presumed that we were all students, which is flattering, but the a lot of them kept saying, a lot of the more mature people there kept saying that the reason they were here is not for them but for the youth,
For the future
for their
generation.
kids, for the ones, and that seeing groups like the Free Thinkers there, which seem to be composed of mostly young people, and then organizing and having measured discussions about governance and about the future of the country and society was very inspiring for them, and gave them the energy they needed to go on, which was
And-
quite touching.
Let's talk about the sentiments. Like other than, of course, the common calls for the scrapping of the pork barrel
Right.
and prosecuting those involved, there were also several people who said the same things, like things along the lines of, "This is our fault, actually. Like
Mm.
we were the people who voted for these corrupt officials, and we have to, take some of the brunt for
Did
what is happening."
Right, right. This is our fault in the last election.
Yeah.
Did anybody go as far as saying, "This is what you get when you have a government period"? Like, were there any open anarchists?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Like there were none, but that's another discussion, I think, for another podcast. So there were a lot of people who attended this event. Like it was generally a success as far as the event goes, because there still is a pork barrel.
Yeah, no,
Like
there's
we still do not know what the government is.
The PDAF has been
actually going to
abolished,
do.
but like anybody who can read it can tell that there is still a system for
Yeah,
allocation
it
of
could be
funds
just
to,
a renaming of
Yeah,
the PDAF.
right.
But
Um,
a lot of people there are
But the
saying
point
that
is-
they will
Yeah.
remain vigilant. Like
people did go.
yeah,
Nobody, like, it was safe.
yeah.
It was well organized, and which I think brings the lie to a lot of people's preference. For whatever reason, there seemed to be this romantic notion that they wanted. Well, they seemed to want two things. One, they wanted no organization,
Mm.
because they wanted a fully spontaneous
Yeah.
movement, like Occupy,
Yeah.
without seeming to realize that the Occupy movement
Was very organized.
was
Very-
extremely
yeah,
organized.
yeah.
But even then, like, their main problems, since they didn't focus on like one call, they had vague demands.
Yeah.
Like it kind of petered out. Whereas here we at least managed to focus. But yeah, they seem to not want to be organized, but then they still wanted to come to a safe event. And then they said that they didn't want to go because it seemed unsafe. But then they don't want people to organize to make it safe. And then they said, "Oh, I don't want to go there because other groups are there." But then they don't want to go there themselves to speak up. So it seemed like, well, at least those are some of the sentiments you saw online. And I don't know how many of those people ended up not going, but at least 80 to 100,000 people did go, and that made us quite happy.
And all this started mostly in social media. It spread in social
Right,
media.
right.
And let's talk about that. Like, was this our kind of like
A litmus.
you know, it
well,
wasn't
I was talking to some of the people in
it wasn't
Rappler,
our
and they're-
it wasn't Arab Spring, definitely
No,
not.
no,
Like,
no, no,
it's,
no.
It's not that, but this is kind of like you said.
it's
yeah.
The online news group Rappler was, at least some of the people there were saying they wanted to monitor this very closely because this is a litmus test of how significant social media is in this country.
Yeah.
Like this is, let's look at a movement that's born primarily from social media. With a lot of the traditional groups were there, but their usual channels, but it seemed to be outnumbered by just the people who heard about it online. And then they came, and this is the ultimate test. This is what we've always been wondering: like, can online civic agitation translate to the streets,
Yeah.
or
The
in this
common
case,
term
a
I think
nice-
is like collectivism or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know, you
Will the
you
collectivists
share, yeah.
and finally stand up and off
like
their
go out,
couches?
get off of their asses
Yeah.
and into the streets, and the question was answered. They
Yeah,
did
they
come
did.
out.
It can work.
Yeah.
Given the right reason, like people will go out.
But do you think they'll continue coming out? Like for
Well,
people
that's-
who this is obviously a new thing for a lot of the people there. Do you think they'll keep on coming to
That's the
events like
thing.
these?
I'm maintenance is always the hardest thing. I mean, they might feel that they already went there.
Mm-hmm.
They have shot their activism load, so to speak. They all of their friends have asked, "Hey, did you go? Were you there? Were you there?" And then they say, "Yeah, yeah, okay, I went. I'm good. I've done my part by being there."
Yeah.
And then they might end up doing nothing else. I don't know.
Yeah, people could sense, of course, that this is one of like a historic moment
Right.
for the Philippines. Like a lot could spring from this. Like it could signal a dramatic change in our government. But I think that you're right. We have to be vigilant. Like nothing could come out of this if we don't continue doing
Right.
stuff like
But
this.
even then, like the calls are as unspecific as stay vigilant. They are as vague as watch for it.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard concrete calls to action. What would be handy would be, for example, at something concrete would be the next budget. At the next budget meetings in Congress, for example, or whenever they're going to discuss,
GAA,
whenever, or the GA, the General Appropriations Act,
Yeah.
it would be handy if people actually went out for that, because we've seen there are many seats available in the congressional gallery,
Yeah.
but most of the time nobody goes because nobody seems to care enough. So what would be a good concrete result from this is if
Yeah.
people actually went and watched.
I don't think
Which
it
I
would be
don't.
enough to say let's not vote for these people. Like that's too far away. That's too far off.
Right, when you say things like "let's not vote for this person,"
I heard some people say like let's not pay taxes until the PDAF is scrapped to our
right,
satisfaction.
which is actually the sort of active thing that would be, if not at least I don't know if it would be effective, but it would be something concrete,
Mm.
and it would make a real stand. But I don't know if people are prepared to do that.
Yeah,
Like, because that's
civil
active civil-
disobedience. Yeah.
Well, it's civil disobedience. It's a criminal act. It's not even civil disobedience. You're going to jail. But I think
enough
given,
people do it,
if
maybe,
enough people, again, what this proved is, no matter how many people want to stop you, no matter how much the government may want to stop people, like even the police, who behaved very well today and were very kind and coordinated, but even then they were trying to tell people, oh, be careful, there'll be bombs, like we'll see if we can, we'll see if these backpacks, they might be dangerous. But no matter how many people may keep, no matter how much the government may keep trying to tell people, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. Even today, like you shouldn't go out there today. There's no need. Like I've abolished PDAF, guys. Like you don't
that
don't
didn't work
go.
out,
It's
yeah.
Yeah, but
Maybe
if
it
enough people
vindicated
go,
some of the
I
anger,
wonder. I do wonder. But if people want to go, like they'll go, and there's nothing really the government can stop it. I mean, the government really should be afraid of its people, as long as they can get off their asses.
So yeah, that's something to look forward to. Of course, people aren't satisfied with Pinoy's reaction, which is why they showed up in such huge numbers.
One thing I do hope though is that the aversion which I've been seeing for a lot of people, whether for whatever reason, whether understandable or not, like a lot of the people online who said they would want to go today,
Yeah.
they seem to have an aversion to activists in general. They're like, oh, I don't want to go if the activists are there. Well, the next time that they go, guess what? They're all activists now.
Yeah, we're all in it.
Yeah,
Now.
they went today.
You're
Yeah, you're an activist.
Yeah, you don't get an official badge for it. Like
Yeah.
the fact that you did show up,
Yeah.
like makes you an activist, and you have to
Own
like,
up to it.
It's good to be an activist. Like why wouldn't it be?
I
Like, it
think
shows that you care.
It's
it shows
been
that-
tainted with a lot of the actions of like people have a stereotype that they're like violent and that they're disruptive for no good reason. And,
Yeah. Well, of course, it's wrong that people think an activist
Hey,
should be
we-
one way or
Right,
another. Like
right.
you can be whatever kind of activist you want to be, and I hope that more people do become activists in their own way. At the very least, be aware of what's happening, and if you're not satisfied with it, then do more than just click like and click share. Like get off your asses, show up to events like this.
The democracy thing is
And-
kind of pointless if you don't.
Most of all, just talk about it. I think that's a huge step. People don't want to talk about these things. It's not as exciting as gossip or
It's not as exciting as
latest
gossip columns or sports.
hipster music or telenovela, as a lot of people there.
Yeah, and
were
a lot of the
saying.
people there themselves are saying like, why can't we get this on the news instead of telenovelas? There
Yeah.
should be real.
Yeah. So I guess we can end with that call for people to be at least consider being more active, if not an activist. So Thank you for listening to this podcast that's also a video, and see you next time.
Morning, fellow free thinkers. We're here at the Luneta, and this is pretty much the biggest meetup we've ever had. So we just set up a few things. If anybody wants to come by, just look for this crowd. Say anything that you want, as long as you're civil. Just like every other free thinker meetup, except out here. Thanks.